Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes is coming. I just screwed that up, didn't I? No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
And I get to make the joke about Mike screwing up the intro. Anyway.
You know, in the rest of the world, when people make podcasts, they do it one time to perfection. Like, they keep taking takes over and over and over again till they get it right just the way they want it. And then that's what they play in the beginning. Instead, I've got to do it at the beginning of everyone.
I like to have it fresh and spontaneous.
No, you just like making fun of me when I screw it up.
Maybe I do. Anyway, this is the podcast that was started by two guys on Cigar Night. So, what do we got today, Mike?
So, I've got an interesting article here that I'd like to bring up. The name of the article is We Are Repaganizing by Louise Perry. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit of it, you know, and then I'm going to want to hear kind of like, you know, I got some thoughts, and then I'm going to want to hear your side here. All right, so we are repaganizing. Given the widespread practice of both abortion and infanticide, even in Christian cultures, it's apparent that people struggle to abide by a moral principle that causes huge practical problems. Christianity only ever blended with paganism rather than fully replacing it, because Christian teachings do cause huge practical problems for followers of the faith. It's difficult to be a good Christian. And she goes on to say it's supposed to be. The legal status of abortion is at the center of the contemporary culture war because it represents the bleeding edge of de-Christianization. There's a very short and brutal poem by the Scottish poet Holly McNish, written in 2019, titled Conversations with an Archaeologist. He said they found a brothel on a dig he did last night. I asked him how they know. He sighed. A pit of baby's bones. A pit of newborn baby's bones was how to spot a brothel. I mean, that's classic fare for anybody who's known anything about archaeology, is that you see a pile of baby bones, most likely it is a brothel. Because what has history shown us? That they toss away the boy babies, and they teach the girl babies how to become prostitutes. That's classic classic world history. You know, it's like, we're like that all over the place. So let's define paganism before we get started on this discussion. Paganism, in the way we're discussing it, is about nature. That there's many gods in nature, all of whom we're just trying to become more spiritual without defining what our ethics and morals are. So when we deal in a world where everything is about spirituality and aligning our spirit with the spirits of nature. So the spirits of nature are about creating. They're not about destroying. The spirits of nature are actually about destroying, but not creating. If anyone can understand that one, then you can explain to me. There was a great book in the Druids where that line came from. And it was the idea being is that we are neither both nor the same at the same time. And because we are neither both nor the same at the same time, you'll find in each different paganistic religion, you'll find various differences that define their ethics. So if there's no ethics that's defined, as in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or such, then what do you do when you get to a point where you have like a moralistic choice? And if we're going away from that morals, what do we then say about our society?
Repaganizing seems to be something that goes back to the days of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was like the first of the intellectuals who started us on our way to what was called the Enlightenment and the French Revolution. He was like the first of those intellectuals that took us away, that began taking us away from the Judeo-Christian perspective on life. And Rousseau, by the way, was a really lousy human being. He had, with his mistress, 5 babies whom he put into orphanages. And back in those days, putting your baby into one of those places was essentially either a death sentence, or if they managed to survive, they would have been a vagrant for the rest of their lives. That was Rousseau. And Rousseau was the person who taught us about the noble savage, about how good humanity was before all these artificial constraints were put on us by civilization. how man used to be free. Man is born free, but he's always in chains. But if you look at actual hunter-gatherers, uncontacted tribes, you will discover people who live in a way that is, let's just say that murder is a lot more complicated. For example, Napoleon Chagnon, for example. He was the ethnographer who explored the Yanomamo. And what he
Say that again?
He's the ethnographer. He explored a tribe called the Yanomamo. And they're, in, I think, Brazil or Venezuela or something like that. It's the Amazon tribe.
They're in the Pantanal. Okay.
It's an Amazon tribe. And he found them fighting with each other. The violence was absolutely endemic. And when he asked them why they were fighting, they were basically told him, we're fighting over women. And they wanted access to women, and those who killed other people got more access, and those who didn't got less, if any. The human beast, in terms of how we started as hunter-gatherers, was absolutely vicious. And civilizing human beings didn't help much until the revelation at Sinai. Because the Bible, essentially, it's a polemic against paganism. It is the constitution of ethical monotheism. Let me give you an example of the kind of morality that existed in civilization before the Judeo-Christian ethic spread across the world. One of the most famous of the Roman philosophers was Cicero. And Cicero wrote works of philosophy like De Officia on moral duties. And he tried to explain what people's moral duties were as a human being. But Cicero also owned apartment complexes. And in ancient Rome, apartment complexes were not really well built, and one of his collapsed, killing presumably dozens or hundreds of people inside. And in one of his letters to one of his friends, he wrote about the apartment collapse. And he didn't give one hoot about the ordinary plebeians in his apartment complex. The casual callousness towards human life among one of the greatest thinkers of ancient Rome is absolutely amazing for someone reading it today.
Well, hold on. Before you go into that, I just want to interrupt. There was a Chinese ambassador whose name I don't remember right now, but he did a famous line about the Americans, where he said that they taught us that the American dream was not a moral one, but it was a financial one. And now capitalism took down communism. And I think about that as you're speaking. How many people who own slums today really care about the people who are living in their slums? How many people who are own a bunch of apartment buildings really care about the people in their building, or do they just want their check? I mean, have we really changed that much in 2,000 years? Basically what I'm seeing is we're not. We think we are. We think we're getting better or this, but we have more technology. That's it. Our ethics, our morality, it's dog
right,
eat
but
dog.
if you...
It's dog eat dog. It's survival of the fittest. Darwin may have been wrong about a lot of shit, but he was not wrong about survival of the fittest. He was not wrong about saying how we're basically animals.
Right. The thing about what Cicero wrote is that somebody today probably would not have written that. They would not have put that on Twitter, and if they did, they'd be canceled in like a second. People would just be absolutely screaming and yelling about how insensitive they are to all the people who were flattened in the in this apartment collapse.
Well, hold on. All right, I'm a football player, and I love football, and I watch football all the time. And I see over the last several years the roughing the passer penalties that they're calling left, right, and center every way, and it's affecting games. People want to tell me who's the greatest of all time, right? We're talking about quarterbacks, right? The abuse that the quarterbacks took back in the day was much more than the abuse that they take today, right? But because we changed the way things are, and we've taken a lot of the violence out of there, or we're trying to take the violence out of the game, we basically made a pussification of what the sports used to be. Now, I think guys like me who were awesome back in the day would be obsolete in a game today. I was a run-stuffing nose guard where, I need to be a pass rusher today. That's the way the world works. And because we've changed, I know you're not understanding how this is coming.
Yes.
Right? But the basic idea is that we've changed the rules of the game. And that by changing the rules of the game, we still want the same things that we used to have, just now we have to say it differently.
I think you're asking too much of religion, and here's why. Because humanity is what humanity is. And the Bible constantly tells us about how people, even though they saw miracles for themselves, consistently fell short. They consistently fell short even though they saw it with their own eyes. And we who have not seen it with our own eyes, of course, we're also going to fall short. And when the bottom line conflicts with our moral duties, a lot of people are going to take the easy way and concentrate on that bottom line. They're going to say, screw the other guy, I'm getting mine. And that's going to happen. But it's going to happen less when we have a way of thinking that says, and this is what the Judeo-Christian ethic brought to the world, is that the weak, the people who are, it's that the weak, the people who can't take care of themselves should be taken care of, and that they have value in and of themselves. For example, among the ancients, not one single voice in the ancient world made any moral objections to slavery. And some of the ancient philosophers were themselves ex-slaves. And they had nothing to say about slavery as an institution. People should not be slaves. People should be free. None of them said that.
But why? My question is why?
Because it didn't occur to them. It never once.
Right. So slavery, we can't look back 2,000 years ago with our American 2023 eyes and be like, Romans were wrong because they did slaves. No.
I'm not asking. No, the thing is, it's like this. I'm not asking people to look back at the ancients and say they were wrong. What I am saying is that if we do succeed in removing the Judeo-Christian ethic from our society, you might not like what you see.
Well, no, but hold on. But let's take that look, because even the Bible says that slavery is okay. Now, I'm going to point something out with that, though. While the Bible does say that slavery is okay, here's the difference between the Jews and the Christians on that. The Jews have something called the oral law. And within the oral law, it tells us exactly how we are to treat our slaves. For instance, a slave will only be a slave for up to 6 years. And then if they want to stay a slave, then they get to make the choice to stay a slave. Right? That's it. That's an interesting point there. They now have a choice. They can choose to remain a slave, or they can go out after their 6 years. Now we get even more. When it comes to, again, let's go back to the oral law. Imagine, for instance, I've got a steak and I've got a piece of chicken. Who gets the steak? Is it the slave owner or the slave?
In the Jewish tradition, it would be the slave.
Right, the slave, because you have to have an equal or better than what the master's eating. That's the point. Slaves in the Jewish religion were treated with ethics and with mercy and with love, and that's the point that people don't understand. When God saw the world and said to the world, okay, we understand slavery is going to happen, but we need to be moral and ethical about it. And when we can no longer be about it, what happened? God takes it out of the world.
Okay, there's a couple things that need saying here.
Say it.
When the Atlantic slave trade started in the early 1500s, early 1400s, whatever it was, The Pope tried to stop it. It was Pope Alexander. I'm not sure if it was Alexander the Sixth. It could have been a different one. Anyway, he tried to stop it. He was asked, these people they've wronged nobody. Is it okay to capture them? No. Is it okay to enslave them? No. Is it okay to employ them to do work on your farm? No. Did anybody listen to the Pope? No. And what happened
I will tell you why in one sentence.
Because he didn't have the power to enforce it.
No, because might makes right.
Exactly. He didn't have the power to enforce it.
That is the Roman philosophy that has lasted through the years. To this day, you still see that philosophy in how America or Russia or China do things. Might makes right.
That is the way of the world, and it has been the entire time. And the only thing that was ever going to make people reconsider might makes right is ethical monotheism. Anyway, so about the Pope, he tried to stop it, and in the New World, after a while, there were both Catholic and Protestant colonies in the New World, and all of the Catholic colonies had a slavery code that at least tried, to mitigate the condition of slaves. For example, the French colonies had the Code Noir. The Spanish colonies had the Código Negro Español. And
the British colonies didn't care.
Okay. The British colonies, yeah, they certainly didn't have a
They weren't Catholic. They were Anglican.
Exactly. They didn't have a central religious authority that could do it. And the slaves' fate in the New World had a lot to do with where they ended up and what kind of tasks they were handed.
I was watching this cooking show recently about Creole cooking.
Okay.
And it was amazing to hear how the French and the Spanish were so much nicer to their slaves than the way the British were. It was very interesting as I'm watching this show. Like, the Creole basically came as a mix between the French, the Spanish, and the Native Americans. And, obviously with the slaves, and it was interesting to see how in New Orleans was one of the safest spots in America in the 1700s for slaves.
Well, that's because in New Orleans, it used to be a French colony, and it was governed under the Code Noir. And
but that's the point.
Exactly. It was a French crown property until Jefferson bought it. And
wait, hold on one second. For those who want to know about what the documentary was, it was like how black cooking changed America. It's on Netflix for those who want to see.
Okay, well, today's woke ethic, if you want to call it that, relies on this person is a victim, therefore they should be entitled to special benefits or special rights or special consideration or whatever. The notion that someone being weak and therefore a victim and should therefore get special treatment comes straight from the Judeo-Christian ethic. And replacing it with paganism is not going to have the result of continuing with woke. Continuing with a victim should be treated solicitously. Instead, I would think that it would just go back to the old pagan ethic. For example, let me tell you what the Greeks did. During the Peloponnesian War, there was a big civil war in Greece in the 400s BCE, and it was between Athens and its allies, and Sparta and its allies. And Athens, which was the bastion of democracy, this enlightened place, they went to an island called Melos, and they said, "Okay, Melians, we're going to need you to come in on our side." And the Melians said, "Excuse me, but we don't want to take sides." And the Athenians says, "Well, if you know what's good for you, you'll be taking our side." And the Melians said, "Listen, just because you're stronger than us doesn't mean you can come in and tell us what to do." And the Athenians famously said, "The strong do as they will. The weak suffer what they must. Your choice is either one, to come in and join on our league, or two, we're going to kill every man, enslave every woman and child." And that's exactly what they wound up doing. Another example. In I think
There's the right ray of sunshine.
in the 500s BCE, the Senones, led by a barbarian named Brennus, came and sacked Rome. And the Romans, for the first and one of the last times for a very long time, had to surrender. And when they surrendered, the Senones demanded lots and lots of gold in payment as a ransom. And when the Romans were weighing out the gold, they noticed that the Senones were cheating. They're getting more gold with unfair scales. And the Romans complained. And then Brennus took his sword. He threw it onto the pan of the scale and says, "Vae victis," woe to the defeated. So your choice, really, in the world is not between, ethical monotheism and some sort of science fiction future. It is between ethical monotheism and paganism. And if it does go that way, the future, it's not going to be a bright one.
So now, when we look at it, we're really trying to come up to this ethical point of what is more important. It is our soul, or is it our money? What really are we going for? Are we really about the preservation of society? Are we about the preservation of mankind? Or do we just care about the bottom dollar and say, screw our kids? Because you want to talk about Rousseau. Rousseau had 5 kids. He just tossed them aside like they were nothing. I've got 4 kids myself, and I would lay down my life for each one of them. So where are we as a society? I'm just anecdotal, one guy. But where are we? Who are we? And what are we? And that's something that we need to really determine. Because at this moment in our time right now, we're not dealing with morals and ethics anymore. We're showing over and over how the bottom line is what's important to us, and how capitalism is the American dream, not morality. And it's not just America, it's the whole world that's that way, where the finances overtake the moralities.
Okay, I'm going to shut it down.
All right, well, I thank you all for listening today. Y'all have a good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one.
Ever feel like you're being watched? Megan Peters didn't, until her life took an unexpected turn. As a pre-med student at UCLA, Megan auditions for the role of Lenore in the upcoming comic book movie Raven. Little does she know, the romantically hopeless billionaire Jerry Neville has set his sights on her. Deploying a powerful machine learning algorithm, Neville makes Megan fall in love with him by hypnotizing her with ordinary-looking internet communications. Within weeks, Megan is under his spell. But the story doesn't end there. What awaits Megan in this web of deception? Uncover the truth in the thrilling novel series Kingmaker. The first volume, Consent, is available on this channel. Subscribe now to dive into a world of mystery, romance, and suspense. Don't miss out on the dark secrets waiting to be revealed. Subscribe for more.